Well, moving on to the other big story we're tracking today. Now, the Supreme Court has rejected the plea of telecom operators seeking a recalculation of their AGR dues. AGR refers to the revenue earned by these companies from spectrum and other non-telecom revenues. Now, the Chief Justice of India rejected the curative plea filed by Vodafone Idea, Bharti Airtel and various other telecos. And Varun Gakar is reporting on this and joins us now. Varun, a huge blow coming in for these telecom companies. Take us through what happened in court.
That's right. So, big setback for the telcos such as Vodafone Idea, Bharti Airtel, as the top court has rejected their curative pleas that were filed against top court judgment which came out in 2019 that held that while calculating these AGR dues, all these telcos will have to include their non-core revenues as well. Now, telecom operators had filed their curative petitions based on the premise that the Department of Telecommunications had made a grave error in the calculation of the AGR dues, and on top of that, the top court had imposed an arbitrary penalty on these telcos. Now, the curative plea was taken up by a 3-judge bench led by the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, on August 30 this year, and the order was made privy to us only in the morning. Now, let's understand what AGR is. AGR is basically a revenue sharing mechanism between the telecom operators and between the Department of Telecommunications. Now, under this mechanism, the operators have to pay a certain spectrum usage fee and a licensing fee to the Department of Telecommunications. Now, how the DOT calculates this fee is by calculating it as a percentage of the AGR. However, what constituted AGR was under dispute since 2005. Now, in October 2019, the top court ended this 14-year-long battle and held that while calculating these AGR dues, the telcos will have to include the non-core revenues as well. Now, the 2019 judgment was a big blow to all these telcos, and specifically Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel were staring at dues worth more than 1 lakh crore. Now, since the curatives have been rejected, this seems like a final nail in the coffin in as much as any reconsideration in the AGR dues case is concerned.
Varun, thank you very much for joining us with all those details. Now, how much of a hit would Vodafone and Bharti Airtel take on the back of this judgment? Rusha Samaya from NDTV Profit joins in with a report.
What are AGR dues? Well, these are the dues which are paid by the telecom companies to the government in return of using their spectrum license. Now, government calculates this on the basis of total revenue, which includes revenue from telecom as well as non-telecom business. However, the telecom companies were really upset about this fact, and they said that only revenue from telecom business should be included while calculating these dues. And then they filed various petition and plea against this kind of move by the government to various authorities, and the latest plea filed by Vodafone Idea was in October 23, and today the Supreme Court has rejected that plea and said that the telecom companies are required to pay the AGR dues. But then we'll move on to the quantum of dues which are payable by Vodafone Idea, Bharti Airtel and Reliance Jio as well. Well, starting with Vodafone Idea, now it owes around 70,300 crore of dues to the government. Bharti Airtel owes around 44,000 crore dues. Well, there's no major dues payable by Reliance Jio because it started in 2016 and has already paid their dues to the government. Now, moving on to the kind of cash that is lying on the balance sheet of these telecom companies, if we can move on to showing the cash, we'll see that Vodafone Idea has around 535 crore of cash and Bharti Airtel has 16,340 crore of cash. So a huge sort of asset liability mismatch is seen over here, but Bharti Airtel has lower dues than Vodafone Idea and higher sort of cash balance. So Bharti Airtel is better positioned than Vodafone Idea, and Vodafone will be hit the most because of the rejection of plea by the Supreme Court. But then let's look at the kind of timeline going back in 2005 and 6 when all this started, where government took the decision of how AGR should be calculated, and the telecom companies were upset, and then in 2019, these telecom companies had filed a plea against this kind of decision taken by the government. And even moving ahead in 2020 and 21, telecom companies, filed the plea, but then it was rejected. And Bharti Airtel paid about 18,000 crore of dues, and Vodafone Idea paid about 7,800 crore of dues to the government. But as I rightly mentioned, in October 23, Vodafone again filed a plea, which was rejected by the Supreme Court today. So all in all, just concluding, number one is that telecom companies will have to pay these dues to the government, and number two is that Vodafone Idea will be hit the most because of its huge asset liability mismatch over here.
All right, Richa, thank you very much for that. And joining us for more on this is our Satyan N. Gupta. He's the ex-principal advisor at TRI, and H.P. Ranina. He's a lawyer at the Supreme Court. Good evening, both of you. Thank you very much for joining in. Mr. Gupta, to you first. Mr. Gupta, this is a huge blow to both Vodafone and Airtel, but more so for Vodafone. It is already besieged by a lot of financial trouble. Now, this essentially could sound the death knell for them.
Not exactly, Nupur. Yes, it is a big blow for them who are already under big stress. But this actually, if it is wrong or if it is injustice, it can be undone also. Though the Supreme Court have rejected the plea itself, but actually in India we have two pillars of what we call democracy: the judiciary, which is supreme, and then the government. Actually, government can also help if they are convinced that there is something injustice is being done. If you remember Justice Bhagwati, the old Chief Justice, in one judgment he told to a lawyer that, gentleman, this is a court of law, not court of justice. So Supreme Court have done whatever they could do as per the law. But there is a concept called natural justice. The natural justice can be actually, you can say, implemented or can be used by the government through different means. If government believes that there is an error, there is an arithmetic calculation error which is genuine. Actually there is a saying called EOE, error and omission accepted. And that is a famous actually clause which is used in most of the invoices. Even the government invoices also normally have that. So if that is the case, the government suo moto actually can have a relook on the calculations. They can make use of some experts. They can make use of some independent accountant, independent auditors, and they can have a look on the calculations. And if it is found there was a genuine mistake under EOE, they can actually suo moto return the overpayment made by these telcos. So it is not against the law.
Mr. Gupta, you still believe that there could be a way out for these companies, particularly Vodafone, because, in case this hit is too hard for them to digest, we could be creating a duopoly sort of a situation. I'm going to go across to Mr. Ranina on this one. Now, obviously, legally, this marks an end of the road as far as the AGR dues bit is concerned. But as Mr. Gupta was pointing out, do you think that the government may now, look at perhaps an intervention from their side?
Yeah, Nupur, I think Mr. Gupta is right. But if they make a recalculation, that recalculation will have to be made for all the telecom companies, not only for Vodafone. So it is entirely the choice of the government to give some relief if they so wish, but then it will benefit everybody else. But they have a 10-year period to pay the amount. And ultimately, Vodafone was aware of this. And as I was interviewed last year, I mentioned that there is no point in going for a curative petition because there's nothing wrong or illegal which the Supreme Court has done. And therefore, the petition was bound to be rejected. Therefore, they were aware of the consequences. Merely going on a curative petition doesn't help them. But they will now have to get the money. If they don't have the money, as has been pointed out earlier, and Vodafone UK or Netherlands will have to bring in the money as a promoter and pay the dues. There is no other solution. They will have to pay. There may be some relief in terms of recalculation, but that's a separate issue. Whatever is the amount finally decided will have to be paid.
Right, Mr. Ranina, so as you're pointing out, even if there's some relief in terms of recalculation, it won't be a very huge amount. So as far as the dues remain right now, and they're about 70,300 crore rupees for Vodafone in particular, those will have to be paid. Is that correct?
Right, absolutely right. There's no way you can get away with it. So the promoters will have to bring in funds if they don't have enough money. That's the only solution.
All right, Mr. Gupta, coming back to you now, how do you see this impacting Vodafone's debt-raising plans since, that debt fundraise was going to be very crucial for the company's survival itself?
No, Nupur, actually, it will not. It is not new, as our lawyer friend have told. It was known. It was known to the institution. It was known to the banks also. And everything has been disclosed by Vodafone. So it is not anything surprise to the lender or to the investors. That is for sure. But I will still say there is a way out. There is something called law of arbitration. Actually, sometimes the bilateral, like here, the government and the operators, or one operator, any operator who have really a strong case, so they can go for arbitration also, actually, which can run parallel to the judicial process. And I've seen a lot of arbitration cases decided actually as per the fact, as per the natural justice, as I mentioned, and there is a way out. And the volume, as far as Voda is concerned, actually is quite high when they have made the plea, actually. It's quite high. It will be a big relief because the total 70,000 crore need not to be paid, as our friend lawyer also mentioned, in one go. It is in 10 annual installments. So if they can get relief equivalent to one installment or two installment, so that can also delay their struggle and their stress.
They perhaps could be looking to buy more time, and we'll be hopeful that the government will be kind enough to allow for that. Both of you, thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nupur.